overcome with pity. I do not know if I can speak. My limbs fail me. My mouth is dry. My body is shaking and my hair is standing on end. I see the world before me, and I grow anxious inside. I drop my things. My skin is burning. I cannot keep standing. My mind seems to be reeling. I see bad omens everywhere, and I cannot see any good in this slaughter. Who am I? So, anxiety, stress, worry, depression, not knowing what to do with ourselves has been plaguing us since time immemorial. We could say it's part of the human condition. This thing we call the mind. So obviously to talk about Ayurveda, yoga, and the mind in a mere 70 minutes is a daunting conversation. And so we know that we have something to do, but we have little time to discuss it. And it's been a topic of discussion for a very, very long time. And why we love the Bhagavad Gita, because it begins right away with something we can identify with, which is, I have been there before. And if no one in this room has been there before, please let us know, because I do want to parade you in a chariot right, through this little town, because that would be miraculous and lovely all at the same time. So I don't have to tell you the kinds of statistics like 1 in 5 Americans, sorry, that's a statistic I know for 2018, are plagued with a mental illness. 1 in 5. That means we know lots of people, if not ourselves, right, but an identifiable, classified, medical mental illness. 1 in 5, the numbers are growing. At the same time, I find it interesting that they say also more people are doing yoga now than 5 years ago, yet mental illness is going up. I believe probably more people are practicing also Ayurveda now than 5 years ago, yet disease keeps going up. I find that not a good statistic to live with. But Sebastian told us why. Until we heal the planet, I don't think we can truly heal ourselves. So we're obsessed with our own physical health, and I hope someday we become obsessed with the physical health of the planet. But that's a side note, and I wish Sebastian was here to say yay, but he told us that already yesterday, and it is true. So it begins there, but let's not diverge into something that like, well, how are we going to do that? I'm not sure, but I'm trying right along with you. So the mind. I'm just going to offer a disclaimer. First, we've heard already wonderful conversations already about the mind, how to purify the mind. There's a lot of academic conversation I can have with you about it, but I'm a practical kind of school teacher. I love teaching. I have a master's in education. I even dabbled in teaching children, high school children, middle school children. So I love teaching. And so what is our learning objective for me as a yoga Ayurveda therapist, really that's like my passion is integrating the two, is what can you guys walk away with? So yes, we're kind of in a workshop style along with some lecturing. So that's kind of where we're heading. And at some point we're going to stand up and shake it out because we've been sitting a lot, and I hear you on that. So let us begin with a very simple definition of the mind. And this is just going to the dictionary because I thought, well, I wonder what the dictionary says about the mind. I know how I feel about the mind through yoga and Ayurveda, but little definition is mind as a noun, as an object. Oxford Dictionary defines it as the element. I liked that, element, so there we can agree with something. The element of a person that enables them to be aware of the world, awareness, and their experiences, to think, to feel, the faculty of consciousness and thought. Merriam-Webster, short definition, the part of a person that thinks, that reasons, that feels, and remembers, memory, smriti. So in yoga, it's a lineage-based tradition. So we can go to a definition of yoga from the Gita. We can ask Patanjali his definition of yoga. We can go to Vedanta. We can go to other Ashad Darshans, Sankhya, and so on and so forth. But I am keeping it simple, and we're going to come into the path of yoga as Patanjali, since that's most of us meet there. And in the second sutra, we know that yoga is based upon the mind. It recognizes, first we're going to talk about yoga. Sutra 1, Sutra 2 is, okay, well, what is yoga? Well, yoga is recognizing that we have vrittis, thoughts. We already talked about this word vritti yesterday, so that was done for me. Thank you very much. So yoga is about the mind. So the practice of yoga is about the mind. And I always have to continuously remind my yoga students about that, because they think yoga is about downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana, and Chaturanga, Dandasana, and all of these asanas, which I find beautiful and lovely and definitely mirrors for my mind, right? All the time, mirrors for the mind. But we have to keep remembering that in that asana practice, it's a practice for the mind. So Patanjali, just setting up some framework here. So, like I said, the discussion of vritti and thoughts was already offered for me, so we can think of yoga as a practice that methodically will bring about the inner inquiry, and we have to practice. So this is interesting. We can talk for the next 75 minutes about these things, but talking is never going to really truly get us there. It's the practice and the experience and the living path of it. Because often we can find deep peace on our mat during our practice, but then we get in our car and peace is gone. What happened, right? So the living aspect of sadhana to me is a lot more interesting than the actual practice on the mat. That, of course, took several years for me to figure out. Patanjali offers us so many different ways of looking at the mind, understanding the mind, setting up the construct through Pada 1, Pada 2, 3, 4. But beginning in Pada 1, as I often say, look at your mind. Wow, you are crazy. Like, your mind is going to do all of these things, and here are your practices. One of the practical teachings that I often offer, that I can give to clients, right? This makes sense to clients, right? How can we assess our mind based upon something that Patanjali offers? Can my mind easily concentrate, right? What is the status of my mind now to assess? The mind that can easily concentrate. The mind that is concentrated with some difficulty. I mean, number 2 is good. Easily concentrating is the high bar. The mind that has little ability to achieve concentration, and the mind which is completely imbalanced and not yet fit for yogic discipline. That's where I started, for sure, right? Sitting, trying to breathe and meditate, and within 2 minutes you have the whole bobbing that goes on. I was not fully ready yet. So ways to assess ourselves as he gives. Kleshas, closer look at the mind. We have different ways of assessing the mind. I do like these. I'm not crazy on the translations, I'll say that, but we translate these particular teachings to our clients in ways, again, of assessing the mind and not being able, avidya. Well, we could talk about avidya for a really long time. We could say that avidya is plaguing humanity right now. Hashtag fake news. So I can be there forever, right? Then I don't, not crazy on that translation of ego, but it's a sense of I-ness, a sense of appropriation, a sense of this is me, a sense of building walls and closing off borders, and I can continue along that path as well. And the self-identification that creates so much attachment, and assessing where our clients are and ourselves along that spectrum, that is a place where, again, we can refer back to Patanjali. And then that can lead to attachment, a sense of I-ness, it belongs to me, but it's really attaching to that which brings us pleasure, which I believe this attachment also creates a great deal of addiction, because we are what? Avoiding pain. So avoid pain. How do I avoid pain? Well, let me inject myself with something that makes me forget that pain. How can I forget that pain? By numbing myself to the world and to feeling. And so it's, I don't know about, well, I feel the Europeans are a little bit, well, it depends on your culture, so I'm not going to make that blanket statement, but overall, it's almost shameful to feel, right? Shameful to show a vulnerability in the world, and that's, led to a lot of aversion of pain, and of course, fearing death, right? Attaching ourselves so much to this pleasurable world that we live in, and everything we accumulated and created a sense of I-ness around, because it was really built upon an ignorance of not knowing who we truly are, and then we want to cling onto it to the last possible moment. And I would say that I see this much more prevalent in the West than the East. It's always quite interesting to me how long it can take certain individuals to really process that loss of death, let alone fearing your own death. So this is, I think, a bit of a review for most of us. Let's get now into Ayurveda. So we've done a little bit of yoga. What has yoga brought so far into this matrix is offering us ways to look at our mind, how we think, how we process the world, how we view the world, potentially offering us all of the obstacles and the places where the mind is going to go, offering us techniques and ways to be with and work with the mind. Well, Ayurveda blew me away, I have to say. And interestingly enough, I remember when I first went into practice, I thought to myself, wow, I wish they had really prepared me in Ayurveda school to be more of a psychologist in many ways. And I struggled a while being an academic at heart. For a while, I was like, I think I need to go get a PhD in clinical psychology. Not that I don't still think that, right? Because everyone in my family has a PhD, so I feel like I need to complete that task to be part of the family tree. But nonetheless, why? Well, because we studied so much disease, pathogenesis, samprapti, and everyone's, very concerned with the big ones like heart disease and cancer and diabetes and arthritis, and of course anxiety, depression, and stress and worry. But there's more to that, because there is no not thinking about in anyone's recommendation set something for their mind. I don't know about you, but it's like there isn't a single client that goes out the door without some recommendation that's based on the mind. And so that was a pretty big aha moment. I would say more than 15, 12, I don't know, years ago. Wow, I needed to know more psychology. But then I remembered, I was like, oh, that's the yoga part. So you don't necessarily need to go get a clinical psychology PhD. You just need to really get deeper into what yoga is offering into the psychology, because that's what you need. You don't really need the clinical psychologist Western viewpoint of the mind. And then combine that with the beauty of Ayurveda, because I have to say, Ayurveda touches my heart. Yoga touches my heart, but not like Ayurveda, not the way Ayurveda sees the mind. And that's because of Mano Vahasrotas. It blew it wide open, but I also have to tell you, it took 3 years for me reading it, then it really blowing wide open for me in my heart. So, basic definition, mind is the active part of consciousness that yields the body into action. I really love that definition because now there is a link between my consciousness and my body making choices, my body being put forth into action. That means there's a link that wasn't there before in our definition. And so that's the role of Mano Vahasrotas, right? Which is the mind-carrying channel definition. But how awesome that Ayurveda offered us the mind channel. I mean, that, coming from my introduction, which is a scientific world full of scientists, me, myself, studying biomedical sciences and being in a lab and growing viruses. So, other lifetime, this was wild for me, really. And so, Mano Vahasrotas, Ayurveda's mind-carrying channel. So, directly from Charaka, there are 10 vessels of great biological importance attached to the heart. Yet these are some mythical vessels. 2 upper limbs, 2 lower limbs, the trunk, the head, other viscera, consciousness, sense faculties, 5 objects of senses, and soul, together with its qualities like happiness. The mind and the objects of the mind are located in the heart. So it has nothing to do with my head. So that was a new perspective, right? So it continues, the objects are perceived with the help of our sense organs together with the mind. The intellect determines the specific properties of the objects that we see, our intellect, and impels an individual to speak or act intelligently. So body, mind, soul connection, the tripod of life, which begins, right? The Charaka Samhita begins with Charaka offering us that. What is life? Well, it's a tripod. It's your mind, your body, your soul. And all 3 are equally important, right? Not one is more important. So we understand that a disturbed mind or Mano Vahasrotas disturbances can look like anxiety, stress, depression. There's insomnia, addiction, and being overwhelmed and overcome by a slew of emotions, which then drive us to wrong decision making and wrong actions, right? And so we want to take care of that. So a little review, because every time I say it, I have to be like, wow, Ayurveda is amazing. Again, Mula, the heart. Not the physical heart, anahata heart. So the root of the mind is in the heart. We have to remember this more often, I think. Put a little note card like in your closet as you open the door to get dressed every morning. The root of your mind is in the heart. Next time someone pisses you off, the root of the mind is in the heart. Right? Mantra. And we already talked about the 5 bilateral pairs, nadis, we could say. The root of the mind is in the heart. Where is it? Where does it go? Everywhere. The entire body. That means that every cell in your body has mind. All, 3 trillion, don't quote me on that. Lots of cells, trillions of cells. No wonder we are so confused. You have like 2 trillion minds talking to you at any given moment. Seriously, right? Because if you believe your body talks to you, when you say, my body knows, that's, right? The cell, the nucleus. Pilu Agni, Pitara Agni. We can talk biomedically, right? Always refers back to Ayurveda. So So your entire body has mind. That means there's anxiety perhaps in your big toe. So why are you treating anxiety in your head? What if depression is in your colon?
Can I say something? So do you think the cells communicating in a different way? Because I thought it's a whole organism, it's a community, so I would think if there is somewhere in the body anxiety, it will manifest all over the body. There will be like, here I'm peaceful in my toes, and in my arms I'm happy. You know what I mean? Like, wouldn't it be like a state that everything communicating in the same vibration?
Not if the communication gets stuck, confused, or goes the wrong way. So if we think about the flow of prana through nadi, then that is the movement of prana. So, and even from a neurological understanding, you can have a block. Physiologically it makes sense, like you can think of, that's why we have to get angioplasty. But if I put this in the perspective of the flow of prana, prana can flow the wrong way, literally. It can go through the wrong channels. It can get confused. It can move too fast. It can move too quickly. For example, something for me like restless leg syndrome, right? It's a flow of prana that's been stuck. Think of kaivagunya. I mean, for me, it's very similar to pranic kaivagunya, that you can have a place where prana becomes confused. If prana becomes the communication between cells, those networks can flow the wrong way, too fast, too quickly.
In some parts.
Of course, the entire body is a network and in concert, but at the same time, there is the pranic confusion leads to disease if prana is communication. Because if two cells are not communicating properly, right, if cell A is not communicating properly to cell B, and cell A is telling cell B, hey, evil dude's down there. Yeah, see him? He's evil. Okay, let's go attack him, right? But he's not evil. But lost communication creates an immunological response, for example. And that's communication through cell receptors. I mean, I know the mechanisms by which we're talking about, but let's just break it down to prana, to communication. So, yeah. Hence the flow of nadis. And wait for it, mukha, the opening. What is the opening of the mind? This is wild. The mind opens out to the world through the senses and through Marmani. That's why we love Marmani and yoga and Ayurveda. We're crazy about Marma, right? We had 2 workshops about it yesterday. I think a yoga class and a second workshop-based yoga class. So why Marma is powerful? Right? Why? Because our mind opens out to the world through these points and through our senses. And why we treat the mind through Marma. And what's the theory between treating the mind through Marma? Is that because it's the pathways of energy, that as I treat the Marma, I stabilize the flow of prana. I don't even want to say that we control prana. I just like to say that I stabilize. Prana is intelligent, supremely knowing. I do not need to tell prana what to do. I just need to support prana to find its own stability. Hence, why pranayama is the most powerful thing we can do. And the sages said so. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So the mind opens up through the sense organs. Why Patanjali is pretty big on pratyahara. Why Ayurveda is pretty big on supporting our senses, and why so many of our dinacharya practices are about supporting our senses, right? Abhyanga, skin, netrabasti, or simple poor man's netrabasti, a little bit of castor oil on the eyes at bedtime, right? That's for the eyes. We can oil the ears, we oil the mouth. And what do we not oil? So we oil all of our sensory organs to protect our senses, because that's the way our mind opens out into the world. Why in yoga we are taught that your senses are the food to the mind. You want to feed the mind? How do you feed the mind? Through your eyes, you feed the mind. Through the ears, you feed the mind. Through your tongue, you feed the mind. Through your nose, we feed the mind. Through our skin. Our mind would have zero entertainment if the senses were not feeding it. Why pratyahara is a big deal, right? It's like withdrawal of the senses. Okay, well, what does that mean? Right? It means that all the prana isn't going out there, right? And it's not feeding the mind to create more vritti. So why it's important to give your eyes a rest, give your ears a rest, give your skin a rest, right? What does that mean? Well, think about what kinds of sheets you're sleeping on, right? What kinds of clothes you're putting on your skin. We talk a lot about the energy of food. I can get stuck talking about the energy of clothing. Where did your fabrics come from? What was the energy of the person making it? On and on and on. Yeah. Why that's important too. It's all about back to saving the planet. So the seat of the mind is in the heart, the mystical heart. Let's not forget that piece. The objects of our sensory perception enter into the heart, where perception becomes attention and understanding. The main functions of our mind are thinking, inquiry, creating goals, and direction. Purushartha, right? And the object of the mind. So this is why the best expression of sadhaka pitta is the processing of sadhaka pitta through the heart. If sadhaka pitta were to take every impression and churn it in the heart, only one understanding would come. And I think we know what that is. Love. And not, the cute little heart love, but love that's true compassion and true understanding. And that is the place of living yoga, that the yogic practices help us understand what Ayurveda is trying to teach us. Your eyes are innocent, but the mind decides the processing, what it sees. But what if we just see? And what if we just hear? And the sound isn't pleasant or unpleasant, but it's just sound. Right? That's the goal of the living path of yoga, that we see the world without the judgment. And I don't mean positive or negative, but without the vritti. To see, to feel, to move the senses. And the only way that happens is the recognition that the root of the mind is in the heart. It's a living practice. I have yet to conquer it. But every day is a new day, a new dawn that I get to remind myself of this, right, teaching, because it makes life a whole lot more pleasant. So how do we go wrong? Right? How do we go wrong? What does Ayurveda say? How do we make some mistakes? Mental lama is a phrase that I learned from my teacher, Vasant Lad, and that's where we go wrong. How do we create mental ama? So energy gets stuck, energy gets confused, right? Pranic confusion. Repression and expression of emotions adversely affect manavaha srotas. Your relationship with your thoughts, your relationship with your emotions, your relationship with your feelings should be clear and calm. These are his words. If we repress or ignore emotions, they become mental ama, and they will be lodged in our connective tissues. The big fancy word in yoga now, fascia. It's cracking me up a little bit. I'm like, rasa, but it's okay. It's cute, right? Fascial yoga and fascial release. And in Ayurveda, we're like, that's nice, abhyanka. Release lots of fascia. Right, so emotions, right? Also, why our first tissue is rasa, and rasa means taste. So again, this is, crediting the source. This actually comes from volume 3 of our textbook. And causes of manavaha srota drishti, obviously things that are going to create, and some of them are way too much, but excessive desire, excessive grief, fear, or anger, right? Becoming attached, preoccupied thoughts and feelings. Let's stay up at the top with which we know happens when we see with our clients hypersensitivities, excess emotions, weakness of the body, injecting ourselves. Why? To numb the negative pain. lots of negative thinking, negative emotions. We know that we daydream. Studies show that more than half of our daydreaming thoughts are of the negative type. So not only do we daydream and are not able to stay concentrated, but then when we go off and daydream, it's not even positive. Right? We're not thinking of castles and fairy tales and nymphs. Though here I think we are. At least I am. That's all I see. Or I'm looking, coming. So this gets a little technical. But this is where I really got it. Is that if the mind, if it's just like all the other Sratamsi, how do we evaluate the state of the union of Sratamsi? Is the flow too fast through Sratamsi? Is the flow too slow? Is it stuck, bound like a ball, which of course we can say tumor, Siddha Granthi, or do we have just complete chaos where we could say rupture and the flow is now in a different channel?
Congestion, isn't it? Forced congestion.
Yeah, Vimarka Gamana. Yes. So that's how we can also look at the mind channel, right? So Ayurveda offers us a way to evaluate the mind channel through these 4 different lenses or ways to look at the way the mind is moving. And again, same source, crediting volume 3. And lots of notes.
Do you mind repeating the 4?
Oh, we're
Sorry.
coming. Well,
You're going there.
yeah, we're going there now.
Amazing.
Now you get to see in Sanskrit.
Cool.
Too fast, ati pravriti, moving too quickly. So this is the mind channel moving too fast and too quick, right? So and that means that, some people could label it excess pranavata, but it's so much more than that because it's all of the mind channel moving too quickly, processing things too quickly. So mind moves constantly into the future, moving forward thinking constantly, too much thinking. Obviously this looks like vata aggravation in the mind, but there's also not, because there's competitive, aggressive behaviors. Anything that we could say, label it 0 to 100 is one way to see as the mind as moving, the mind carrying channel or prana in the body surging like a waterfall all the time. Whoosh.
Which is what technology does today, isn't it?
Yes.
It helps us, all technology with mobile phones, all the social media, it's like that constant go.
Yes. So technology supposedly was supposed to help us in efficiency, yet no one has more time.
Right.
No.
It's an enigma. No one has more time, yet we've got things that were supposedly help us. I mean, you've got supposedly some assistant on the phone that's, I don't know, she's not taking care of my groceries, but whatever. No, and I would want to pick out my own vegetables anyway. But nonetheless, yeah, it is. And of course, moving us into the future and TV watching, all the extra.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's probably the main cause for anti-gravity today, wouldn't you say?
Yes. For some, yeah. Mm-hmm. One of the definite main causes, yeah. But then the opposite, Sangha, which there's a lot of this too, and I loved, I don't remember because my mind is jumbled in who said what yesterday, so I don't want to give wrong credit, but I remember the excess tamasic food intake, right? Creating a very tamasic, depressed living. Why? Because most of our foods are of the excess tamasic type. Why? Because it's processed or left over and canned, all of that good stuff, or just basically not real, right? As you were just talking about GMO-based food. So Sangha, that creates then the opposite, which is excess, slow. It's not excess, well, it can lead to excess, but it's just, now it's dull, depressed, slow, and sluggish, which it means that, right, we are not firing on all cylinders, if we were going to be a car. So mind gets stuck in the past, right? It's all about the past, all about the past. We're not jumping to the future, we're stuck in the past. This is attachment. right? The way things used to be, the way things were, huh?
Some more kapha. I mean,
Yeah,
that's when you said
could be, yes, yes. But notice that in Ayurveda, classical Ayurveda, we've yet to talk about the doshas with the mind. Because classical Ayurveda does not attribute Vata, Pitta, Kapha as psychology. I do it too because it's just, it's easy. I mean, how many words do I have to teach my clients? I mean, they're already pissed at the words that I'm giving them now, so I don't need to add to the mix. I understand why we shorten it. But then at the same time, I think it leads to some confusion. Confusion. So lack of direction, right? This is not understanding the concept of purushartha. What are we here to do, right? Adharmic living. We can talk a lot about how adharmic living is plaguing most of society. Now, further up pathologies, like these kinds of pathologies are not your common day pathologies that are necessarily going to walk through, but then at the same time, it's not that they're all very severe, because these types of pathologies means that there has been mental ama for a really, really long time. So now there's increased bala, which means strength of disease, and so now we can get a situation where we are in a deep place, right? And I mean, this is the kind of jealousy that drives you into not common actions. The kinds of actions where maybe you jeopardize someone else's. I can think of medical school, experiments where out of jealousy that star students over here are going to compromise their success. So Sira Granti means tumor growth, like granti, like a knot, but this is an energetic knot, right? This is what, it's different than, oh, I have a tumor, right? You have an energetic tumor. There is something that's literally stuck and you cannot move it. You are stuck and it is fixed and it's going to take some dynamite. I remember, even yesterday there was some conversation about certain clients who are so stuck in their ways and we just don't know how to reach them. And the answer was, well, you got to change their mind. You can give them 1,000 recommendations, but you have to work like this, right? Because you have to get them out of there. Well, I'm going to follow, this diet, no matter what, because they're so stuck, so tough. We have to recognize, though, when a client is in this place, because you're going to beat yourself up over recommendations, right? And then it's going to be like you're banging your head against a wall continuously. Not good times to do that. Now, this is whoosh, right? Explosion. We could say vimarga gamanam, which really it's flow gone wrong and hemorrhaged in a way, which is going to lead to things that I personally don't treat, which is psychosis, but definitely drug addiction, alcoholism. I do not have any schizophrenics in my practice, thankfully. So this is where we see addiction, which is why it's so hard to work with addiction. It's the fourth, right, pathology, meaning we're going down the line of more intensity, more strength.
Rory, would you include, food addiction in there? Because some people find it really hard to not eat refined sugar, which is 8 times more addictive than cocaine?
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, yes, all addiction. Yeah, it could be sexual addiction.
Right.
Yeah, it has, and it's, full-on addiction. Yeah, which means, by definition, it's ruling your day, it is ruling over day-to-day living, right? A lot of people are like, I'm addicted to chocolate. I'm like, is it ruling your life, your chocolate addiction? No. If I'm on an airplane and I desire some chocolate, I'm not going to freak out and make them land the plane because I need chocolate. Now, if you're an addict, that may look a little different. So it has to be full addiction. So Stratamsi, again, this is we could say medical, academic model that Ayurveda offers us to work with the mind, look at the mind. The yoga piece comes in, which allows the contemplative practices to realize where we are. Now, We did talk about mental ama, so, and I did say that it gets lodged into the connective tissues. I know there's a lot of discussion of which tissues go with which emotions. I understand. These are the ones that I know Dr. Lott has offered in many of the discussions that he's giving to the APA already. So for some of you, this is nothing new, that grief is going to go to the lungs and fear wants to go to the kidneys, and hurt and worrying and not received love is going to go to the heart. Our liver is anger. I will never forget the day that he said the liver of an angry person and an alcoholic is the same. Chronically angry person. I was like, well, time to take care of that anger. Okay. Gallbladder, jealousy, and envy, and spleen, attachment, greed. So take it, leave it. I just think it's all part of the dots. When it comes to working with the mind for myself and others, it's a connecting the dots. And the more dots I have to connect to help me have lenses by which to receive information, which is why I love Nyaya as a method of inquiry of the Shadarshan, is because for me it's getting the dots that I need in order to connect. And the more I have, the better. And so I'm trying to offer you all of these different constructs. So Ayurvedic doshas of the mind are Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. The Gita has a lot also to teach us about Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. So I'm not really here to get into a massive discussion about Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, but they are the doshas of the mind. And I've been taught this various different ways from the world of Ayurveda, from the world of yoga, and then also really my living path, because at the end of the day, all I have to offer you is my personal experience, not some academic regurgitation. We can all do that. So this is what we can agree with. Who is Sattva, who is Rajas, who is Tamas? What's more interesting to me is how can I teach my clients, my students, understanding Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas as the three energies that, if we follow Samkhya, brought about the creation of this entire material universe. It was their play, their dance, that led to me and why I am here. And so that's who Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas are. And so as these creative, beautiful energies of the world, then they also become the creative energies that create the world, and the world is created by my mind. So whatever I believe the world to be is who my mind tells me the world is. So my world is just this amazing Hollywood, Bollywood film all wrapped up into one, right? That hopefully has a lot of peace and tranquility within all the wonderful excitement, because we can't forget to enjoy and dance just as much as we seek that peace. So that's the play of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, that we are here to really be in this dance, right? But we have to dance mindfully. We have to dance with awareness. We have to dance lovingly. Guided through the light of Sattva, right? That's the goal. I feel also that sometimes we get super obsessed about Sattva. And so we have this little phrase called super sattvic syndrome. and I find that this is a problem. Yeah, seriously, I'm like, okay, super sattvic syndrome, calm down yourself, right? The world is not some sterile bubble, and the more you try to make it this sterile bubble, the more super sattvic syndrome you get. And I remember, when I wanted to be the perfect Ayurvedic yogini, so I could never leave. It's like I had no social life because I needed to be in bed by 9:30 because I needed to get up by 4:30 to get through my dinacharya list, which takes 3.5 hours. How long can you sustain that if you have a job and you have householder living, right? How long can you sustain it? So I've been through super sattvic syndrome, and I'm surrounded by it a little bit in both the yoga Ayurveda community of people that are like, you're eating that. Yeah, I'm eating this. It looks good, I'm gonna eat it. I'm going to pray and it's gonna be fine. Yeah, and my Agni can handle it. And why I love the first talk right? How we started, right? Our first time was like, yes, okay, I'm in the right place. If your agni can handle it, then eat it, right? Right? The ice cream is good, go for it, right? And don't, because the more we freak out, the worse it's going to be. So that's what we have to be careful of. Super sattvic syndrome. Yeah, sattva is amazing, but we can't create this life where we become obsessed by this thing called sattva, right? And having gone there myself, I guess I can talk about it a little bit. So what is sattva? It's the idea of living balance. So if you go super sattvic, you're no longer in the world of balance, right? Because we love to, especially in the United States, supersize it. So supersize sattva. I mean, like the golf size sattva. I went for it. But that's not balance, and that's not stability, right? The mind gets confused, and it's centered. And yes, it's light, and it's luminous, and it's why we love it, and it holds the capacity for happiness, but not external happiness, internal happiness, the kind of happiness where you're just sitting and you're just filled with joy and you don't even know why you're filled with joy because all you're doing is sitting, right? That happiness. And you didn't go looking for it. It is set to move in and up, and offering wisdom and insight, and it brings that which is love and calm and open. So these are the words I can use with my clients, right? Things that make sense to them. Rajas. I'm not here to make Rajas be a bad person, because we all need to move, right? We all need some activity. Sometimes we need to disrupt the current status. Sometimes we have to say, it's not okay. Inequality is not okay, right? That's Rajas. Gandhi was extremely sattvic, but he had to be rajasic to do what he needed to do, right? So that's Rajas moving in the light of Sattva. So we have to move in the world, but may we move in the world in the light of Sattva. So rajasic, sattvic Rajas is what we're looking for, because we cannot, the entire universe is moving all the time, right? I think we have that. Quantum physics has proved it. We don't even know what the smallest particle of light is at this moment. So it's dynamic, it's excitable, it's about movement, right? Everything that allows us to disperse and disintegrate. So it is the activity. Passion is a word that humans enjoy, and it is that the energy that disperses and disintegrates, right? Which is often necessary in the world. And Tamas. I'm also not going to be like the individual who hates on Tamas, because sattvic Tamas is important. I need to be able to sit to meditate, meaning be stable, meaning not move. I also love sleeping, right? Love sleeping. So Tamas in its sattvic form. So no movement, still and steady. It is going to cause obstruction, but sometimes we need to obstruct the flow. Right? That's what a riverbank is for. It is our stillness. It does move down. And at some point we have to break down what we've created. Right? Decomposition. Moving down and decomposing. So Tamas. So yes, in excess, Tamas is going to look like dull, lethargy, sangha, right? Sangha of manovahasrotas. And yes, a depravity of manovahasrotas as rajas. Too much. But we've already said, too much sattva, too much rajas, and too much tamas. Any of these three create mental instability. Meaning moving the pendulum so far into one direction that we become blinded by it. Because energy loves to follow energy. So momentum is going to build in the momentum that you take it. And right, what we love to say, be in the flow, go with the flow, right? The flow of what? With the flow of prana, right? The flow of the energy and the momentum by where you are taken. So Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, very useful model for looking at the mind. Here's, I don't know, have you guys ever taken those SRT tests? That Sattva, Rajas, Tamas test, like a Prakriti test? but it's called a Sattva, Rajas, Tamas test. And I don't know if you, early on, I had the test, I thought they were really cute, and then I gave them to my client, but no one ever wants to say they're tamasic. Ever.
No.
I know, everyone's sattvic. Everyone. My favorite is in class, because we took the test in class in level 1, and then Dr. Glad says, okay, well, let me feel your pulse and I will tell you. And then everybody's like, comes up sattvic, 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 and then he sheds the truth. Right? Everyone's not so sattvic. But he says it in a way where it just doesn't make you feel bad. But point is, this is why self-testing, in my opinion, is just not, the efficacy of that is questionable. But do you know what I do like is, I like the self-testing because I like to see what the clients
Right,
mark off, right? So that is an insight for me. So I do give them prakriti, vikriti, and mental assessments just to see what they've marked off, but not to take that as like the solid truth of God that has come down upon me about who they are. But it gives me just another dot, and I love dots because I told you I'm a scientist. So the more data I can gather into my hands, and I feel the closer I can come to the truth. So if you do create a Sattva Rajas test, which I have done, first of all, don't label it Sattva Rajas and Tamas. So get those labels out in case they know it, because I don't know, but I have a lot of yoga teachers who are clients of mine, so they already know these words. So I had to get rid of these tests, and also just put it in a way that makes sense. Not the I am aggressive. Okay, I'm not going to click off I am aggressive. I can become irritated when my buttons are pushed. Yeah, right? So that's my piece of advice there. So, disclaimer. This is, next slide has nothing to do with any classical texts. This is the way that several teachers have presented a way to work with the Mahagunas and understand why perhaps we went to Vata Pitta Kapha psychology, right? So my big question in school was like, well, why did we do this whole Vata Pitta Kapha psychology, right? And everyone talks about, oh, my mind is so Vata, or my mind is so Pitta, or whatever. I'm like, when it's wrong, technically, how do I work with this, right? How can I wrap my mind around that? So several teachers have in different ways presented this information to me, and so again, I'm not putting this as like some psychological code of truth, but one way to think of it, and I'm not here to argue who's who. I'm just a messenger, it makes sense to me. Vata is movement, so Vata is going to have a little bit more Rajasic. So if I had to give someone the Rajas quality, it's Vata, and I know some people are like, but it's supposed to be Sattva. I'm like, listen. Rajas is movement. If Rajas is movement, Vata is movement. We know that Vata is the dosha that moves, so one way to think of Vata is predominating over Rajas, which is why Vata mind is more Rajasic, thereby likes to move more quickly, jump into the future, and is full of ideas and is inspiration, right? That doesn't mean that Pitta doesn't have that, but yet that's why they tend to have super sattvic syndrome. They're better, their mind tends to think they are smarter than everyone else, they do everything better than everyone else, they are Pitta perfect. More sattvic, right? The super sattvic syndrome. They want to learn everything into its perfection. They're also in the middle. Vata, Pitta, Kapha, it's kind of the way they're always presented. They also represent fire. Fire is light. Fire is luminous. So they're always, they're going to tend, the mind is going to tend to go towards that light if I want to, again, create these parallels, right? These are just offerings. Kapha is then why going to be more stuck, why they're going to be more resistant to change, right? If I plan a vacation with my Kapha girlfriend, then I know that I cannot change that vacation plan 3 days before we're going to leave. It will create stress and anxiety for her, so I don't. So I make sure that we plan the vacation and solidify really 1 week before we go. We just pick where we're going, but the actual activities, calm yourself, we'll get there. So, Tamas, I like more steadiness. It is the mind is going to be more steady, more stable, which is why it's not going to change as quickly. And really understanding this psychology is so powerful in relationships because it's no longer about me. I tend to be, my mind tends to go more sattvic and rajasic for sure. I know if my beloved tends to be more towards the tamasic side, I have to remember that when I have a bright, brilliant, amazing idea, it will take him 3 days to get back to me, and I need to not get pissed about that. That took many years to figure out, right? So it's just seeing those tendencies as the energy of who they are. So there is a play. This is, again, a possible model that can be useful. For me, it's always giving clients tools by which to assess themselves, because empowering a client is the greatest job that I have. And I think, as one of my teachers said, I think almost the first day of school years ago, you know you've been a good practitioner when your client no longer needs you. Right? When my client no longer needs me, I'm like, glory be to the goddess, come see me, seasonal changes. I don't do panchakarma, I recommend out. So unless, they need me for something, to me that's the greatest gift, when they can go off and they just, maybe check in once a year. That's beautiful. So empowerment through wisdom and knowledge in decision making. That's what I want to do. One last model. This is an easy model. I offer you this model not because I invented it, because you're going to know right away where it comes from. Right? No signature needed. So I loved this when he presented it, and we got to develop it a little bit further. I mean, a little bit of my history is I went to the Ayurvedic Institute, and then I decided that the best way for me to be really close to the wisdom of the Satva was to work for him. So I devoted 4 years, literally, of my life to drive, fly, and literally be like the honey to the bee, and pluck his mind. So every airplane ride had some quiet, because I did honor. But so I loved it when he showed this to me, and we got to talk about it and have some discussions. So we going back to Vaisheshika, right? Shadarshan Vaisheshika, as you can see, I'm a lover of philosophy, and of course, as a scientist, I love Vaisheshika because it's about how many molecules of earth are in your mind, how many molecules of air are in your mind. And so for my scientific family, this model works really well. I can say, Mom, look, you're a space cadet because, it's presenting in this way. So if we have too many molecules, gunas, right, molecules, we can look at the mind through Satva, Rajas, and Tamas, but then it comes out into the elements as earth and water and fire and air and ether. Knowing that earth is our memory, right? Water is that emotional mind, right? The water of the mind, the emotional mind, the fire of the mind, the comprehension, the passion. The air of the mind, the movement of the mind, and then ether, the space, which is really peace. When you get to know the elements, you can really understand how the elements can manifest in the mind. So this chart kind of breaks it out a little bit for you. So space, qualities, bringing the mind, expansion, freedom, right? Freedom. I find this is really important because if you were going to ask me which element, we need more, is space. Time, space. Space between thoughts. Space between a conversation. What if I just allowed a bit of space before I hit send? Right? Disease needs space for healing. It's why we like holiday. I love like I say holiday instead of vacation. Holiday. Right? But what if holiday doesn't have space? It's probably why
Just I notice that people would have very big houses, they're more miserable. You know, like honestly, you know, and they have like one person, 5-bedroom house, and they're lonely, you know.
I moved into, I rent, and I remember I moved into a house that had really super high ceilings in the living room, which was my main hangout room, and I never knew for about 3 months why every time at night I lost it. Like I just didn't know what to do with myself. I felt so empty, and it was so not normal. Well, I realized it was the ceilings. So then I had to create an evening routine for myself to not be in that room when the sun went down. I had to go upstairs. So that space, air. Air is wonderful, brings excitability, right? It is mental alertness. We get things done. We are responsive. We're responding, right? Moving, responding. Though it can create to hyperactivity, right? Erratic, non-committal, because you're just moving. You will not commit. Non-committal thinking, being. Fire, radiant, sharp, so fire is going to allow and bring focus to the mind, concentration to the mind, illuminated mind, driven mind, understanding mind. However, that mind can then use all of that understanding to manipulate, to become ego-centered, egotistical, perhaps cynical, judgmental, excess fire, burning everything away. That's why we pittas get early gray, because we have too much fire in our hair. Yeah. Water. Water is life, as we know. But water brings everything together. If you put red dye, blue dye in water, what do? They come together. Water is about cohesion. Water is sneha. Water is love. Water is compassion. Water is emotion. So a watery mind, we can say, is going to be the piece or the part of the mind that is our emotional self, our emotional mind, loving mind, compassionate mind, adaptable. What happens when you put water in a container? It takes the shape of the container. So a watery mind is an adaptable mind. Good or bad, obviously, too much adaptable. That means that you have absolutely no self-identity. But some adaptability we know is good. That's why we say go with the flow, adaptable. But too much flow makes you, right, then be overly pleasing, easily manipulated, and creates emotional weakness. Earthy mind. Well, we love earth. Earth has memory, right? There's an entire profession called archaeology to study the earth of the earth. The memory of the planet Earth. So earth in the mind is smriti. It is our memory. Why they say kapha has better memory. It has to do with kapha dosha in the body having more earth molecules. And so more earth molecules means that there is going to be more memory in the whole body, not just up here, but the entire body holds more memory. Also leads to peaceful, quietness, calm, right? The earth. We look at a mountain. Does it look like it's having a party? No. We look at the mountain and feel peace. We look at a mountain and see steadiness and stability. But we also look at the mountain and go, oh man, I can't get to the other side, right? It's a big block. So that block can create a sense of stuckness. I am stuck. I cannot get out of here. I do not see a way out because there is no space. It's very compact. Can create depression and dullness when there's too much earth in the mind. So this is where, in another lifetime, I feel like I've lived so many lives, I was, I owned a health club. I was an aerobic instructor and personal trainer, yes. That was in my 20s. And one of the first books I bought, and this is why I'm telling you a story because who cares that I taught aerobics, but this is what's interesting. As a personal trainer, obviously I had to counsel clients on food and eating. And I am not joking, but in 1993 there was a book called Food is Mood. And I didn't, I was like, yeah, food is mood, whatever. But, now looking home, I'm like, oh my God, of course, see, food is mood. So why do I like this particular idea? Is my clients and students can understand when a food is earthier or has more water or has more fire or has more air, crunchiness, right? Airy, crunchy, right? Space, meaning like the juices and juicing and not eating enough. And why there is going to be a link between what you eat and how you feel. I mean, I know that we're like, yeah, but then, well, how do I put that into practice? This is always my question. I'm the practical girl. I'm like, all right, well, I love your theory, but now give me a practice for it. Give me a way to understand it, or I need a way to have a kinesthetic experience in order for me to know it. I can see it, I can read it, but I don't know if I believe it until I feel it, until I have an authentic experience. So this is a nice model for supporting food, diet, mind, understanding, if you take food back to the elements. Because I don't know about you, but I don't know who memorizes those food lists. You have to have a relationship with the food to understand the rasa vidya vipak. It's not about a chart, right? It's about a understanding as food is moving through you, and we can all relate to the elements. I'm big on elemental living and really seeing the world through the elements. I should be almost. So Ayurveda and yoga therapy. Ayurveda gives us the insight to proper lifestyle. Yoga is going to give us the practices that help us make better choices. So both are going to bring truth to living, action to living. How are the ways we're going to do that? There are Ayurveda therapies. I'm not going to get into these because I think you guys are rooted in these. Nasya we talked about, Netrabasti we talked about, Shirobasti. In the US it's actually really difficult to receive that treatment, but can't not put on the list. Abhyanga, oiling the feet, that's an easy one to give clients. We know how powerful that is and also good for the eyes, so that is also another eye treatment. We've talked about Marma therapy. We've definitely talked about Panchakarma this entire weekend, Shirodhara, and there are some research studies on Shirodhara and mind. So there are one or two out there I can tell you. And then Dinacharya. Bottom line, if you have some form of routine, getting up at the same time or going to sleep at the same time, but there is routine in your life, a routine life will always support a stable mind. I mean, no need to say anything else. Pranayama. These are the pranayama that we use in Ayurvedic yoga therapy to support and work the mind. Here's the list, but here's a chart. So here we go. Bastrika. Bastrika pranayama. It is forceful inhalation and exhalation. It is a pranayama that is going to wake you up, perk you up. It is your coffee, right? It is going to remove tamas from the mind, sangha from manoahasrotas. It's definitely activating. Why we start with it? Number one, right? It's extremely rajasic, movement-oriented. Moving to Kapalabhati, well, it's in the word Kapalabhati. What does that mean? Skull, shining breath. So it's nothing about fire. It is tridoshic. It isn't about heating either. It's about tejas. It's about illumination. It's about bringing light and illumination to the mind, but in a cool way, not in some hot way. It is the blue light of tejas, Kapalabhati. Anulom Vilom, its claim to fame is balancing the flow of prana through nadis, through specifically right side, left side, Ida and Pingala. So if there's any pull between the analytical mind and the receptive emotional mind, Anulom Vilom is claim to fame to stabilize the flow. Bhaktilal often says it's going to support bringing serenity and contentment through its balancing action. Agni, fire, luster. So good digestion, happy mind leads to good digestion. We know digestion, enteric brain, massive connection between the two. So restoring our mental fire. Agni Sara, also the way it's done with breath retention. Brahmari, in the name Brahma, expanding our consciousness, right? Increasing the space element, Brahmari, or balancing, I would say. I don't even want to say that. I want to say, let's say, balancing space. So bringing peace and calm to the mind, in addition to much of the knowing and understanding that Brahmari also helps to restore and balance the neurochemistry of the brain. So I would say Brahmari, probably in the world of yoga therapy, without even Ayurveda, is one of the most widely used pranayama. Udgeeth. Udgeeth is one of the favorites for hyperactivity, hypermind. Often when there is excess mental thinking and there is hyperactivity of the mind, the inhalation will be shorter. An anxiety attack is a prime example of that. When one is having an anxiety attack, having had them in my other lives, definitely, a few times, you cannot breathe. It begins with the inhalation. So anxiety isn't leaving my body. It has a memory of anxiety, but it doesn't really rear its ugly head in my life anymore, because the moment I even feel my inhalation shifting due to a stressful situation, I immediately lengthen my inhalation and stop the chaos that could potentially ensue in my head. So Udgeeth works on strengthening your inhalation. So why Udgeeth is one of our favorites for really helping that excess prana, hyperactive. So Udgeeth. Shitali. Shitali cools anger, irritability, impatience, both. Now, I'll tell you the difference between Shitali and Shitkari. They're not really necessarily interchangeable. Shitali through the center of the mouth, or right center. So center going down right to the hara, to nabi, to the belly. So very centered movement of flow and prana. I have very successfully used Shitali for cigarette addiction. But it works. It works. I'm not saying it's the only thing, but I have had great success when the desire comes to smoke the cosmic pranic cigarette. It is so much healthier, right? Of course, we know about Duma and offering all kinds of beautiful herbal mixes to support that as well. But just when that desire comes, it's been extremely successful. Shitali.
So you don't need to have your tongue rolled, because I can't do that.
Yeah, so it's the straw.
Right, that works the same.
Mm-hmm. The key is calm, smooth inhalation, right? Shitali is not going to calm the mind if you're like, right? And being an intense individual, that's how I started to do it, right? I remember my teacher going, not like that. That's very calm. Okay. I was trying to do it perfectly. No, that's not very calm. Okay, sorry. Okay. And so it's like you're sipping the nectar of coolness. And so, or the tongue. But the point is calm and smooth. If you would like to cool down irritability. Shitali, on the other hand, is through the teeth. Into the cheeks. That goes to the periphery, right? Periphery. So, shitali, center channel. Shitali, you get the cheeks and the periphery. So now I think, liver, spleen, gallbladder, right? Even periphery, kidneys versus center channel, right? Nabi, heart. So while I do not feel they're exactly the same, the technique is different, their effect is going to be different. Yes, they both cool and calm, but I believe to different areas and different organs, and that's been my personal experience with the two. And then there's udgeeth. Udgeeth, what a wonderful way to end, connecting to source. Udgeeth, though not written here, also works from Muladhara up to Sahasrara. It's a complete movement of energy from the base to the crown, but it helps with not just the neurochemistry of the brain, but it is the divine song of the Lord. Hari Om is the way udgeeth is done. So we start with the chin down, and on an inhalation, the chin is down. On the exhalation, there is a chanting of Hari Om. Hari Om. So there's the movement, the stretching of the throat, communication, right, expression, and then coming down, and the piercing of the through the crown. So it's why we end with it, right? And here, ujjayi, right, it's the so the inhalation gets the strength, and of course, let's not forget the lifting of the arm and exhaling to the left. There's never a time that Dr. Lal comes here and doesn't teach pranayama. I cannot imagine that would be possible. So, more insight on them and why they can be helpful and used. Pranayama, stabilize prana. You want to work on the mind. I can't say enough about pranayama. You can take all the herbs you'd like, but we can't live on herbs for the rest of our lives. We're raping the planet of herbs. So to keep relying on herbs to do everything is irresponsible. So what can we do? Well, these are practices. They're free, and it doesn't require any special equipment, right? And you just need literally this much room, so it doesn't matter how small your hotel room is. Even if I have a 6 a.m. flight, well, I have no problem sitting in some corner at the gate and doing some pranayama. So just like it's non-negotiable, you have to get dressed every morning. Non-negotiable, I say to my clients, 1 pranayama. So obviously I know no one has every day 45 minutes. I know a shocker, but everyone I know has 3 to 5 minutes. Everyone has 3 to 5 minutes every morning. How do you stabilize prana? How do you stabilize the mind? A pranayama first thing in the morning. Right away. Namaskar, we did it today. So if you came to class, you'll understand exactly what I mean. But namaskar is offering. I have a real problem with the way namaskar is being offered out in the yoga community as your warm up. I'm like, what is that? Or the translation salutation. I don't even know what that is either. Namaha, what are you bowing to? We know that you go to sacred cultures and they were built around the sun, the brilliance of the sun as our illumination, the sun as our comprehension, our understanding, bringing light out of the darkness, beginning the day, facing the east. Today is a brand new day. Maybe tomorrow sucked, but it's like a brand new day. Depression doesn't have to live in me every day. So offering the ability of Surya Namaskar and what it means, done with mantra. Why? Because it focuses the mind. And sometimes a long mantra, right? It could be too much, right? My clients can't all Om Mitraya Namaha, Om Rabaya Namaha, Om Suraya Namaha. They're not going to go through all that. But then there's the bijas. Ram, Hrim, Hrum, Hraim, Hraum, Raha. Bija of the sun. Become the sun, the seed of the sun, right? So those are beautiful. My favorite temple on the planet, Chandra Shila. Anyway, Chandra Namaskar. Chandra refers to the moon meaning the mind meaning that Jyotish, right? And the mind and the moon and our emotions and the emotional mind. So Chandra Namaskar is another way of connecting to the mind, though this is not as classical, meaning if you Google Chandra Namaskar, you find, 25 different variations, all kinds of Chandra Namaskar movements are out there in the world where Surya is a little bit more agreed upon. But it doesn't matter. Point is, then the intention you create in the movement before you begin it, the offering, why are you doing it? What is your offering? Every breath, every movement is an offering, right? It's an inner purification. It is a meaning. It is a mirror. It is an opportunity for me to breathe and move my body, because I do believe that movement heals. Yeah? So done with mantra. Meditation and get a dog. Yeah, you can't be sad when you have a dog around, ever. So that's my little Raja. But meditation, in Ayurvedic yoga therapy, these are kind of like our list. It's helpful to have a list, especially when you're like trying to have, just like you have a list of herbs, I have a list of meditation. Soham, technically we could just end there, but sometimes Soham can be difficult, right? I don't understand Soham, I can't hear Soham. But the universal breath mantra, number one. Number two, some meditation practice from Dr. Lotz called empty bowl, emptying your thoughts, empty bowl, becoming empty. Empty meaning empty in the space in the emptiness, and in the emptiness God comes. You cannot hear the call of the divine if your mind is busy with thought. So offering the place where we empty thought to come into the space, and in that space we feel the touch of divinity is the technique of empty bowl. Walking meditation. Who's going to get walking meditation? Too much tamas, too much sangha, right? Walking, meditating. What does that mean? No iPhone, no cell phone. You go outside, you walk. No one needs a phone to go walking. Believe it or not, our ancestors walked without phones. It's radical, but they did. So you can do it too, right? And if you have that phone that became part of your watch, the iWatch, that's what it's called, take that off, okay? Because now I have to be like, do you have an iWatch? Well, you can't wear the iWatch on your walking meditation either. And no, I know you don't have to wear earphones and listen to relaxing music. Look at the tree and find the relaxation in the tree. I mean, I get all kinds of, I'm like, no. Okay, mantra repetition. That's why I like mantra for Surya Namaskar. When the mind has a lot of thought, it needs something to wrap around. I was that person. I struggled a lot with meditation, to be very honest. But once you're in it, there's no going back. So mantra definitely help. Now, I am not like guru. I'm not giving mantra to people as in this is your guru mantra. That's not my business. It's more of offering a universal mantra that are out already in the world for them to use as a tool, because it's just a tool. And whether they have a mala or not doesn't matter. I found that mala creates attachment because, I forgot my mala. Well, who cares? Set a timer, 10 minutes, mantra. You forgot your mala, it's not the end of the world, right? I left my altar at home, and so what? go pick a flower and make, right? But we create these things, super sattvic syndrome, I tell you. It's like, oh, can't chant without the mala. You can. So repetition, however it is, it's focused in its breathing. So we already discussed our Ayurvedic therapies, and that brings us to the end, which is different ways to assess manas prakriti. This is the big one, the inherent nature of who you are. I think that we become so obsessed with perfection that we have to realize that just as much as you have dosha prakriti, meaning my dosha isn't Vata 3, so being a prima ballerina was just not in my future. It didn't matter how much I loved ballet, right? I just didn't have that physical body or propensity for it, nor do I have the propensity to be a shot putter. So just as much as dosha prakriti helped me understand my physical body and my limitations, that I might think I'm super strong because my mind is so strong, but my body is not as strong as my mind. There's also the understanding of manas prakriti, like what are your tendencies? I know what my tendencies are, my little shadows that I need to be mindful of. I don't know if I'm going to leave this body as a perfect sattvic saint. And attachment to that goal isn't going to get me to the goal either. But the greatest healing I can offer myself and others is really just understanding who you are. That I did come into this world with some anxiety, and to think that I will never have anxiety would derail me, because then I would be pissed that all of a sudden I didn't take care of my problem. But it's more understanding that there is that tendency that lives within me, but it doesn't have to rule my world. It doesn't have to determine how I react. It only has to help me in my path to see the light of calm. So it's just a graha of emotion. You know what I mean? A planet of emotion. And that's the greatest gift I think I can offer in the integration, is that Ayurveda gives me the tools to understand choices and the cause and effect of choice making. And may yoga offer us the wisdom to make choices, because we see the truth from the light of truth versus the confusion of the mind. So assessing ourselves and giving our clients tools for assessment is the greatest integration I see for Ayurveda and yoga in the world of therapeutic happy living. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It sounds like it's very interesting. I'm sorry I've been between two. Has anybody got any more questions before? Did anybody have any questions?
Could you just quickly show how to do the pranayama, that you begin and then you say hurry on?
Udgeeth. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So we begin, so you let's do it together. Sit down, bring your chin down towards your chest. Take a moment to breathe in and breathe out through the nose. It'll be a beautiful way to end. When we take an exhalation, we chant and offer the sound Hari Om. And as you offer the sound, you'll stretch your head up and back, and on the final Om part, draw the chin down back toward your heart. So chin down, breathe from the heart into the lungs. Hari Yeah, because then you begin this way. So you end to begin again. Also to come back to the heart, because the root of the mind is in the heart. Surrendering that head to the heart is the best practice we can do, physically and spiritually.
Thank you very much.